Welcome to Work Unravelled. Today we are diving into something surprisingly that is overlooked: breaks at work. Many professionals wear exhaustion as a bit of a badge of honor.
Mm.
And what if taking breaks actually makes you more productive? So, we're going to unpack today the science, the strategy, and the real world benefits of pressing pause when you are at work or working from home.
I think it's interesting you said there that, this idea of working hard is a badge of honor. We do have a culture of work, 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 grind, grind. There's never a spare moment, never a moment to sort of kick back and, relax. And so I think what we need to stress in this episode and get across is that taking breaks is not being lazy. It's actually very, very sensible. And it's this idea of self-care, but also leadership. So how you take breaks as an individual, but also if you're managing a team, that you indicate to your team that taking breaks is actually something that is positive. And we should talk about, being intentional with how we rest, with how we focus, and our sort of overall general well-being. So yeah, I think we should share some tips on ideas for taking breaks for leaders and managers and anybody in the workplace that's working really hard, and especially for those working remotely, because I think we've touched upon in previous episodes. The idea is that because you're working from home, and we're both working from home, is that you're kicking back and you're not working very hard. In fact, sometimes the research suggests is that people working from home work longer and harder than people in offices sometimes.
Yeah, I think people struggle to switch off then because
Yeah,
it's just, well, I'll just do another half an hour
yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
realize it's got past the dinner time or tea
Yeah,
time, depending on what you call it.
well, that's right.
And or I'll just do a bit of the weekend because the computer's right
it,
there. It's dangerous.
yes, it's always on. Or I was talking to somebody the other day, and she'd had a really busy day, and she worked from home, and she had that flexibility. But then at 9 o'clock, 9 p.m., she's got like 200 emails to deal with. So she turned the laptop on at 9 p.m. and started working on her emails. Now, guess what? She didn't have a great night's sleep that night because mind was buzzing, but she felt the
Yeah,
pressure to get on with the work. But yeah, so
yeah.
taking breaks. Gone.
My partner's the same. We just had a week's holiday away, and she was dreading the week's worth of emails barrage she was going
Yeah.
to have Monday morning. So she logged on quickly Sunday evening just to try and see if there's
Oh,
anything urgent, try and clear through some of those things.
yeah. I think we should talk about holidays. We'll talk about breaks and holidays. But yeah, it's quite common that people dread going away, and then while they're
Mm.
away, they can't switch off because they're worried about what's coming in while they're away, and then
Yeah, because the
they
work doesn't stop.
well, the work carries on whilst you're away, but you're worried about what you're going to have to deal with when you get back. And people log in, like you say, the Sunday evening or the Sunday afternoon. I mean, I'll be honest, I used to do that in the past. I'd say, right, I'm going to go upstairs on the Sunday afternoon and check what's come in. Should we talk about why breaks matter from a sort of psychological perspective? Should we start there? I think if you think about the way that we operate as human beings, we tend to approach it as if we're machines. And I think there's this assumption that if I've got an 8 hour workday or I've got an hour of work, I will be able to focus for that 8 hours. I can focus for that 1 hour, whatever it is. But we're not machines. And the evidence is, and the research suggests, is that we can do sustained focus, but only for so long. And we're not machines, and we're natural organisms that follow rhythmic patterns. So we go into periods of downtime, and then we need some rest, and then we can come back into that period of focus, and then we've got the energy, but we can only sustain that for a certain length of time before we need the rest again. So really what we're saying here, I think, in this episode is that it's completely natural to take breaks. In fact, it's essential to take breaks. And I've got three sort of ideas I want to share with people. There's one called, and this is when it sounds very jargony, vigilance decrement. Have you ever heard of that?
Do you want to repeat that?
Vigilance decrement. It's a fancy term to say essentially your performance declines over time if you don't take breaks. And we probably all have this feeling where you might be doing this now, Scott, listening to me, anybody listening to me, you sort of zone out and you suddenly catch yourself that you've actually switched off. And that's basically what's happened is you've been trying to focus, you've been not taking breaks, and then the brain just literally detaches, if you like, and you're just into that zoned out, the glassy eyes type thing. So if you do not take breaks on a regular basis, you cannot sustain that performance. And really what the evidence suggests is we operate in these cycles, and they're called ultradian cycles, where you'll have a period of focus, and that for many people will be about maybe 90 minutes, 120 minutes, so an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then you have to take a break. Now, if you try and force yourself through that 90 minutes, you'll end up making poorer decisions, your cognitive function will decline, you're not literally thinking as well as you should be. And eventually, if you carry on forcing yourself through those sort of 90-minute blocks, you're going to get that burnout. And then what can end up happening, we talked about this in the burnout episode, is you start becoming detached psychologically from the work. Even though you're sort of sitting at your desk, even though you're looking at your inbox, your brain cannot do it. And you become detached, you're less effective, you're more stressed, you're just not functioning effectively. So really what we're talking about here is that we're not machines, we're natural organisms, and we work in rhythms and patterns, and we need to recognize that and accept that. And if you like, celebrate it. So if you like, that's the psychological, almost, neuroscience approach. Have you got any sort of practical tips that you could offer people from a sort of productivity perspective on taking breaks?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up one thing you said first, which
Yeah.
was the making bad decisions.
Yes.
And I'd read that I've felt it myself, I find myself if I sit too long in a chair, or I'm just trying to work for too long, I start to get like agitated, a bit
Yes.
fidgety, a bit irritable. I'm like, I've got to get up, I've got to step away from the computer. And people who are locked into their seat for a prolonged period of time, let's say they've got a day full of interviews, whether interviewing candidates all day or across 2 days, they can become less likely to positively see the potential candidates as they get closer to, say, lunchtime.
That's right.
And actually, I know there's research out there. You want to be interviewed first thing.
Yes.
There's certain times in the day where they've proved, like the statistics that say you're less likely to get the job, then you'll be seen more negatively by the panel. Same with, what's it called when you go to prison appeals?
Well, I've not gone through that process myself, Scott. So
Of course. Parole boards, that's it. In
Parole
America, they
boards,
did
that's
some
right.
research that parole boards, depending on the time of day, you might be seen more favorably than someone else at a different time of the day, which is really quite scary.
Well, yeah, and you're actually right. I think the research you're talking about, there's probably been a couple of these where they had judges and they looked at the sentencing that judges gave, whether the judges just had a break or before a break or after a break. And what they found was that if the judges had been forced through, they got a load of cases to look at. I think it was parole. I think you're right. I think it was parole boards. Before their break, like they'd been working all morning, they were less likely to give parole. But if they'd had a break, immediately after the break, they're more likely to give you parole because their brain is rested. They've had a chance to step away. They've shaken things out. They've walked around the block or something, and then they can focus again. But just before the break, is that advert? You're not yourself when you're hungry. When that was it? Is it Snickers or whatever it is that's famous? Do we do promotions on this podcast? But where you never
there
yourself.
There are other chocolate bars available.
Of course, but they did find in that research, I think you're right, that if judges were tired, they were irritable. They're basically irritable, and they weren't giving people parole, even though on the evidence, on the sort of whatever criminal, I don't know what it's called, the sort of charge sheet, I suppose, this person should have parole. But get your parole in just after they've had the break. Your parole request.
But yeah, same with interviews. Their subconscious is probably saying, this person is stopping me from having lunch now. I'm really hungry. They're getting in the way of me doing, getting out of this chair. They might not be conscious of that, but surely there's probably something subconsciously going on, like I'm getting hangry, as you said.
Well, the brain is consumes some like 20% of our calories and resources, and as you've used it all up that morning, your brain is crying out. Your body is crying out for extra energy and to move and to get some food into it. And you just can't function. It's like your batteries are drained. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. But again, the point we're making in this episode is that we need to recognize that we're not robots. We may be replaced by robots eventually, but we're not robots just yet. So have you got any sort of tips then, practically then, things people can do, if they accept that breaks are important and essential, any ideas on how people can make that sort of practical?
Yep. So there's two types of breaks. We can call them micro breaks and macro breaks. So a micro break can be from 30 seconds to 10 minutes. And it's just stretching, standing up from the desk, stepping outside, getting some sunlight, doing some deep breathing. People who have smartwatches these days, the watch will tell you to stand up and take a break. It's following that advice. There's a reason that
Yeah.
they've baked that in. And the research says optimally, ideally every 25 to 30 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And certainly if you're in a meeting or doing a presentation for a long period of time, I've always followed the rule that one break at least every hour. If you're sat with a group of people, talking to them, presenting them, running a workshop, at least give them a 5-10 minute break every hour, or you will start to lose them. And some people may have heard of the Pomodoro technique. And that's taking a break, doing intense work for say 20 minutes, then taking a 5-minute break, and then doing another period of work for 20 minutes, and then take another 5-minute break, and then going through a cycle when you then, after a series of those, you take an even longer break. So you'll be amazed at the impact of that, just that separation. Now you have to balance that with the interruption to your thinking, in terms of if you're doing deep work and then suddenly you get pulled out by somebody else, that can have an impact. But if you're in control of being pulled out of that deep work, it's going to have less of an impact, I think. So micro breaks, 30 seconds to 10 minutes, and take them quite frequently.
I think some offices, if you work in an office, people getting up and walking around, it's okay. Some people would look at you a bit suspiciously. I think I've worked in places where, if you got up every 25 minutes and walked around, they'd probably think you were just lazy. Do you know what I mean? There is some cultures are different. I think when you had teams, you didn't check on people and where they were going, time them when they went to the toilet sort of thing. But
no.
Otherwise, people do go and hide. They go and, I'm going to the stationery cupboard. If people still have stationery cupboards, do people still have stationery cupboards? But yeah, people would actually go and get themselves a break, but pretend they were doing something else. And just going down the corridor to see somebody. Although, even if you work from home, you do need to even get up from your desk every 25, 30 minutes, get yourself a break. It's essential. This is what we're saying really in this.
And as we said before, it's harder when you're working from home because you don't have those walks to the meeting rooms or someone else in the other side of the room where you just want to get up. I can have a quick chat with them and ask them something. Now it's a quick typed message or a video call. So I think it's even more important for those home workers.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes interruptions, if they're timed perfectly, could be that break that you needed. Somebody comes over and says to you, can I talk to you about this? It's the interruptions that are constant that's frustrating. But you do need to manage that. You do need to get up. If I've been sitting here for 20, 35 minutes, it's actually a good thing that I break and do something else for 5 minutes and then come back to this, rather than forcing yourself through that sort of feeling of why can't I concentrate? Because you need a break. That's why you can't concentrate. So get up and have a break.
Yeah, and the catchphrase for that is interrupt your focus to preserve your focus.
Yes, exactly.
Rather than just trying to be focused intently for 2 hours straight, it's going to wane and you'll make bad decisions.
I did a project years ago for an Italian bank called Unicredit. I think that's how they say it in Italian. We'd say Unicredit. And they're one of the biggest banks in Italy, I think maybe the biggest bank. And I was running this session with them in the morning, and we got to about 12, and we'd only started like 9:30. And typical sort of British work culture, I was thinking, well, we'll work for another hour or so and finish about 1. And they were like, can we stop now? It was like 12. And we went down to the basement at it was on like lower levels of the building. And there was a full restaurant in this building. And we stopped for 2 hours to have lunch. And I was like, initially horrified, like 2 hours? Because often in British work culture and when I've run training sessions, people want to work through their lunch. People eat at their desk. Now, that's partly because there isn't anywhere for them to go. And if you're working on an industrial estate and literally you're surrounded by some sort of, some big main road, there's nowhere for you to go. But one of the breaks you should have is your lunch break. And take your lunch break. And some people don't. Why don't they take the lunch break, do you think?
They feel too busy.
I'm too busy. I've got too many emails. So that I know why people say they don't take the lunch break. But having that break at lunch is a really, really powerful opportunity for you to step away. And if you can, try and take your lunch away from your desk. That's something else people do. And I think psychologically, your desk, if you're working in an office, even if you're working from home, your brain is still in work mode. So you're not fully switching off. So if you can take your lunch break, you deserve a lunch break. It will do you so much good to have that lunch break, but also go and have a walk if you can. Go see if they can start a walking group with colleagues, see if you can walk around the building at least. And as I say, I know I've worked in many organizations where they're on a industrial estate and there's literally nothing around them. But yeah, if you can just walk around the block, get outside, get some fresh air. The other thing I'd avoid doing if you could is just scrolling on your phone. And I think sometimes when people have been working all morning, they pick up their phone as a sort of, I don't know, like an enjoyment, passive activity. But the evidence is that scrolling on the phone is keeping the brain active. It's keeping the sort of mind whirring away. So you won't find it relaxing. You
It's
won't.
just a distraction. It's
It's
not actually
yeah.
decompressing, and it's not actually
It
disengaging, is it?
exactly. You're still like doom scrolling. You're trying to get to the bottom of Instagram. You're never going to get to the bottom of Instagram. So if you can, don't use your phone. And you might want to check in with emails from family or something, but try and get away from the desk. Take your lunch. See if you can get a walk around, even 15 minutes, and try and get some movement as well. And the research again suggests that moving the body will help you when you come back to get that focus again. And of course, the big break for people in a working place, a working environment, is when they finish work. And if you want to focus in your work the next day, you need to rest the day before. So the really important break is when you finish work. So what happens after work is going to affect your performance the following day. So if you can, and we talked about the commute. So some people don't commute now. They just literally, go from the bedroom to the office, five seconds down the corridor, they're in the back bedroom or something. But if you've got a commute, using that commute to switch off, listen to your music, switch off if you're on a train and read a book or something. Unplug from work as much as you can. Switch off the notifications. Don't open up the work email. Try and step away from work completely. Now, it's easier said than done, particularly if you've got a manager or a leader. We've talked about this many times, haven't we? A leader or a manager that sends emails after hours or something. So if you're a leader, make sure you're not sending those emails after people have finished work officially. But also as a discipline, make sure you've got some sort of routines in place. I do not check emails when I get home, or I do not check emails once I've left the building. That's it. I'm done for the day. And the other thing, of course, is that if you have got routines in the evening that help you relax, hobbies, social life, cooking, people enjoy all sorts of hobbies and things that help them switch off. That's going to help you rest. That's also going to help you the next day focus. And the most important thing in terms of breaks is sleep. Now, we could do a whole episode, and we're not sleep experts, but all the evidence points to focus comes from having a good night's sleep, whatever you need, 7 or 8, 9 hours. But quality sleep is the number one factor in being focused the following day. That's the ultimate break, I guess. So,
yeah.
Have you got any suggestions in terms of breaks and perhaps, I don't know, longer breaks, holidays or something? You've just been on holiday. What was your approach to relaxing? Did you relax on your holiday?
I did, luckily, yeah. And my other half, she did manage to until she got back. We had a rule that we would not talk about work while we were away.
Good.
We would not check any devices. We actually left both laptops at home, which was
well
good.
Done.
It was a last minute decision to do that, which leads me up to go on holiday. But it leads me on to my next point, actually, is holidays are so important. And it doesn't mean people don't necessarily have the money to go abroad.
No.
But actually taking those holidays, I've worked with people who build up loads of credit and I haven't taken any leave this year. And the organization I worked in previously would have to force people almost, you need to take some leave.
Really?
Or you're going to lose it, because people just feeling so busy, or they were workaholics and wanted to kind of protect that leave for a rainy day. There's an entrepreneur called Daniel Presley who I've read a few of his books. And one of the things in his book stood out for me is the first thing you should do, and it was written for entrepreneurs, but I think the same applies to employed people, is plan out your holidays a year in advance. And not necessarily a holiday abroad, but it could be a week off with a family. It could be a weekend away with loved ones. But actually map that out in your calendar so you've got that to look forward to. You've got it planned and it's sacred time and it's well in advance so that people won't try and then, oh, I need you to work
Yeah.
this week. And you say, well, I'm sorry, I've already booked that off. And
Yes.
I think holiday and just time off work, long weekends, etc., is vital for that recharge time.
Yes.
It improves, there's evidence that says it can improve your well-being for up to 6 weeks,
Yeah.
but only, and this is really important,
Yeah.
only if you do unplug properly. And that
That's
means
right.
literally unplug. Avoid taking that, checking your devices, taking them with you on
Yeah.
holiday. And I get that some jobs will require you to be on call, but
Yes.
in those scenarios, you're not fully unplugged and detached. There's always something going on in the back of your head. What if that phone goes? What if they need me?
I've had, well, I think probably myself, people who've been on holiday and then they think they need a holiday after their holiday because
Yeah,
they come back
because
more.
and
Yeah.
then the work hits you. You've got the 600 emails that were arriving while you were away. You've now got to
Yeah.
deal with.
So yeah, holiday, and really go on holiday. Don't just be away from the desk. Be on holiday. And there's
Yeah.
always I don't know about you, but it often takes 2 or 3 days at least to get into the holiday mode.
Mm.
Do you find that on holiday?
Yeah, it
So
can do.
you need to allow for that actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other holiday
So,
tips then? So you didn't take? I'm impressed you didn't take devices. That's really impressive.
well,
Well,
we took
it shouldn't be, should it?
phones. We took phones. We
I've took
weren't
the phones, well, of
completely,
course.
complete
That's
like
true.
disconnected from the world. It was close,
Yeah.
but no, just no work devices.
Right.
And the other part is what we call the re-entry, or
Mm.
coming back into
Mm.
to work. Is don't jump straight back into stress. So as we've said, try and avoid logging on the night before or the day
Yeah.
before. And again, we've talked about it before. The temptation is to open that inbox straight away. The minute you do that and you see all of those messages,
Mm.
your holiday will be long forgotten. So
Yes.
actually think about, again, managing your time. Check out the other episode we did recently about your morning routine. Actually, it's almost more important, I'd argue, when you're coming back from a break,
Yes.
to not just go back into the old ways and say, well, just go into my inbox now. And then you spend 3 days catching up with all the emails that have been coming in while you've been off. And that will demoralize you and really undo that holiday break. So I'd say let's do something really productive first thing as soon as you can. Try and protect your time. Do some high value work that you maybe knew that you wanted to do before you went on leave, and maybe
Yeah.
actually plan some of those things before you go on leave on holiday into your calendar. So maybe the first few days from your return, actually block out some of that time
Mm. I
to
think
do
you're
the
right.
tasks that you know are waiting.
Yeah, I think
That
you're
makes
right. I think,
sense?
as you said, you plan your holidays, but also plan what you're going to do after you get
When you
back
come
from the
back.
holiday.
Hmm.
Don't just like drop back into it if you can. You
Yeah.
know that, and I think when you're on holiday, that would help psychologically to know that I can switch off now because I have a plan for when I go back, rather than at the airport desperately trying to catch up. And if, as you said, if you told people you're on holiday and you've scheduled backwards from the holiday. I was always impressed with people who looked ahead of the year and looked at all the bank holidays and sort of they had extra time off because they put their holidays around the bank holidays. I was never smart enough to do that.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a lot.
I never organized enough.
Yeah. So we mentioned it before, though, so there is an issue that people don't take
Mm.
the breaks that they deserve or they're entitled to. And maybe we should unpick why that is. I think part of it is thinking about, imposter syndrome, guilt,
Yeah.
internally thinking, well, I'm busy. If I take my foot off the gas, people won't think I'm committed enough. There'll be those kind of things. Have you seen that?
I think there's definitely something around the individual response to work, and I need to be there, and this sort of need to be wanted. You said about imposter syndrome. I need to aim for perfection, so therefore I need to be there fully. And so, yeah, I think this is the individual response, but also as a work culture, if you find that your team are not taking their holiday, you need to know why. Now, you don't want people sort of kicking the backside out of it, but if you're giving people a certain amount of holiday, they should be taking it. Have you had that situation where organizations say if you don't take your holiday, you can't roll it over? Have you ever seen that? You can't.
Yeah, I had the policy in the organization I work for. It was a while ago now, but I think it was you could carry over 5 or 7 days into the new year,
Yeah.
but you had to use them within the first month
Yeah, sort
of
of.
that new calendar year, rather
Yeah.
than you just can't keep
Oh, I see.
building
That's
them and
quite.
building them, or you lose
That
them.
I understand that. I think there's a logic to that. Yeah, I get that. But if you are finding, and maybe a metric that organizations should track is if you're finding a lot of your team are not taking their holiday allocation, that should be a warning sign, shouldn't it? Why are they not taking their holiday?
They're probably heading for burnout.
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's probably a leading metric that would indicate people are having burnout if they're not taking the holiday. But you get this like nagging message usually from, don't be too hard on HR people, because we'll have some HR person listening, but you get this message from HR saying, you must take your holiday, you can't take it over. Well, shouldn't you be checking on that? Why are people not taking the holiday? Yeah, so people don't take the holiday out of guilt, pressure, too much workload, an anxiety about missing out on opportunities. There's a ton of reasons. But again, as we've said with the whole break thing, a good holiday is going to transform your performance for weeks after the holiday. That's why you want to space those holidays out, because you keep getting that improvement, that performance boost every time you go away.
So how do we shift this then? How do we shift the mindset for those people who are reluctant to take holiday or to take breaks? And they think, hopefully we've convinced them by listening to this episode.
Well, hopefully we've convinced them that taking a break, they might hopefully don't want to take a break from this podcast, but I think it's about an individual behavior, individual awareness. So this is what we're trying to do here, is that having a break, 5-minute breaks throughout the day, weekly breaks in the evening, regular holidays, it's crucial. It's not optional. It's not a luxury. It's essential. And if you want to succeed in work, if you want to succeed in your career, you want to be, a productive member of the team, take breaks. It's going to help you rather than hinder you. It might feel that 5-minute break or 10-minute break is time you could be working. You're just not going to be as effective as you would be with taking your break. So yeah, it's individual behavior, but it's also cultural within the organization. And as a leader, you want to set an example. We always come back to leaders who are, emphasizing to their team that you respect the team, you value the team, you value their mental health, you value their physical health. So yeah, as a leader, you want to send the signals that taking breaks is essential. So if you are leading a team, you have your breaks. You need to show how people can switch off after 5. As we've said many, many times, don't be sending messages after work. Demonstrating, if you like, leading by example, I guess. Thinking about how you run meetings, make sure people have plenty of breaks. If there's a meeting, don't insist you have another meeting immediately afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, there's a leadership responsibility with breaks as much as the individual behavior. Would you agree?
Yeah, setting that standard. So yeah, it's a cultural issue as well as an individual issue, isn't it, in terms of trying to change that mindset. And I think people can also support that with things like I mentioned earlier, smartwatches will tell you to take a break. But if people haven't got that, setting a timer on your computer or your phone, say, okay, Google, for example, that's probably set everybody's off now.
No, that's right. Or the
set my phone off. Set me a timer for 20 minutes. And then when that timer goes off, that means stand up, take a little break. Using your computer's do not disturb mode as well. So when if you're in a meeting, stepping away, right, everyone in the meeting, we're going to take a break. If it's a virtual meeting, cameras off, mute microphone, back in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, go and have a leg stretch, comfort break. That works well. And I think actually plan your breaks like your meetings. So actually put them into your calendar as well and protect them so people will know where you are if they try and look for you at that time. I'm having a break.
And wouldn't that be great if we had a culture where breaks were as important as meetings? Breaks were put into people's diaries and calendars, and they were protected and reserved rather than just optional, because breaks are not optional. They're strategic. They're really, really essential. Thank you for listening to the Work Unravelled podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next one.
If you'd like Andrew or me to help you or your business, whether it is for team productivity, leadership coaching, or communication skills, our website addresses are in the show notes. Thanks, and until the next time.